The diamonds on the mistress's neck caught the light of the chandelier, blinding the room to the truth, but it was the $10 ceramic pig in the wife's lap that held the weight of a billion-dollar empire. Welcome back, my wonderful family and friends. I am Mr. Zaha. Thanks for tuning in today. A kind words from a man who has seen it all. Marriage are not mostly bed of roses, sometime you need more of. More of what? Can't say. Continue watching, and you will surely know what to do in situations like this. Kindly hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Tomorrow, I'll be bringing you another exciting story you definitely don't want to miss. So let's get started.
I gave the $10 million rolls to my mistress and that $10 piggy bank to you at the company party today.
How could you?
I want a divorce.
Air turned to slush. It remained a pristine, powder-white blanket that draped over the pines surrounding the Sterling Mountain estate. Inside the estate, the air smelled of pine, cinnamon, and money. Abigail stood by the towering 20-foot Christmas tree, adjusting a vintage glass ornament. She wore a deep emerald velvet dress, elegant, timeless, and completely invisible to the crowd of 300 guests swarming her living room. She was Mrs. Sterling, the wife, the fixture. Across the room, standing by the roaring stone fireplace, was Isaac. He was 45, handsome in a predatory way, wearing a tuxedo that cost more than most people's college tuition. He was holding a glass of scotch in one hand and holding court with the other. Pressed intimately close to his side was Chantel. Chantel was 23. She was listed on the company payroll as the executive liaison, a title that made the board members chuckle over their brandy. She was wearing a dress made of silver sequins that looked like liquid metal poured over her skin. She was laughing too loudly at Isaac's jokes. "Abigail, darling," a voice chirped beside her. It was Mrs. Vandermeer, a socialite with a smile like a shark. "The party is exquisite. But tell me, where is your gift?" Isaac has been hinting at a grand reveal all night. Abigail forced a smile. "You know Isaac. He loves a spectacle. I heard rumors." Mrs. Vandermeer lowered her voice, her eyes darting to Chantel. "Big rumors." Abigail's stomach tightened. She knew the rumors. She lived them. For the last year, Isaac hadn't even bothered to be discreet. He treated Abigail like an old piece of furniture, necessary for the aesthetic of the family man image, but functionally useless. A microphone screeched feedback. The room went silent. Isaac was standing on the grand staircase, Chantel beaming by his side. "Ladies and gentlemen," Isaac boomed, his voice rich and confident. "Thank you for coming to the Sterling Christmas Eve. It has been a record-breaking year for Sterling Global, and record-breaking years deserve record-breaking rewards." The crowd cheered. "I believe in rewarding loyalty," Isaac said, looking down at Chantel. "And no one has worked harder this year to keep my affairs in order than my executive liaison, Chantel." Abigail felt a cold flush rise up her neck. The humiliation was palpable. The guests shifted, glancing at Abigail, then back to the stage. "Chantel," Isaac said, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. "Open it." Chantel squealed, opening the box. She pulled out a key fob. It was heavy, adorned with the Spirit of Ecstasy logo. "Come outside, everyone," Isaac shouted. To the driveway. The crowd surged toward the massive double doors like a tide. Abigail was swept along with them, a ghost in the machine. Outside, the cold mountain air bit at their skin, but the sight in the driveway provided enough heat to melt the snow. Sitting there, wrapped in a giant red bow, was a Rolls-Royce boat tail. Custom blue. The kind of car that wasn't just bought, it was commissioned. $10 million of British engineering, Isaac announced, draping his arm around Chantel. "Merry Christmas, baby," Chantel screamed. She threw her arms around Isaac's neck and kissed him. A deep, open-mouthed kiss. In front of the board. In front of the press. In front of his wife. The crowd clapped, but it was a hesitant, awkward applause. They looked at Abigail, standing at the back of the crowd in the snow, her arms wrapped around herself for warmth. Isaac broke the kiss and looked over the crowd. His eyes found Abigail. He didn't look ashamed. He looked amused. "Oh, and Abigail," he called out. "Don't think I forgot you." The crowd parted. Isaac walked toward her, holding a cardboard box. It wasn't wrapped. It looked like something pulled off a shelf at a discount store. He stopped in front of her. The smell of his cologne, mixed with Chantel's perfume, was suffocating. "You've always been the practical one, Abby," Isaac said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Always counting the pennies." Always telling me to be careful. He shoved the box into her hands. Open it. Abigail's hands shook. She pulled the flap open. Inside, nestled in cheap styrofoam, was a pig. A pink, ceramic piggy bank. It had painted eyelashes and a goofy smile. There was a price sticker still on the bottom. $9.99. A piggy bank, Isaac announced, grinning. The silence in the driveway was deafening. Even Chantel stopped preening by the car to watch. Why? Abigail whispered, her voice barely a vapor in the cold air. Isaac leaned in close, so only she could hear. His eyes were dead cold. Because the lawyers are serving you the divorce papers on Tuesday, he hissed. And with the prenup, you're going to need to start saving every penny. Consider this your seed money. He pulled back, slapping her on the shoulder jovially. Merry Christmas, Abigail. Try not to spend it all in one place. He turned his back on her. All right, everyone. Back inside. Champagne is on me. The crowd followed him, desperate to escape the awkwardness. They flowed back into the warmth of the mansion, leaving Abigail alone in the driveway. She stood there in the snow. On one side was the $10 million Rolls-Royce, gleaming under the floodlights, a monument to her husband's betrayal. In her hands was the $10 piggy bank, a monument to his cruelty. She looked at the pig. It grinned back at her, mocking. Abigail felt something inside her chest snap. It wasn't a loud snap. It was the quiet sound of a tether breaking. The tether that held her to her dignity, to her silence, to her role as the good wife. She turned and walked toward the garage. She didn't go back to the party. She didn't go to her room to cry. She went to the guest cottage at the edge of the property, the only place on the estate that felt like hers. She walked inside and slammed the door. She put the piggy bank on the rough wooden table. Start saving, she repeated his words. She looked at the pig. It was heavy, heavier than cheap ceramic should be. She picked it up. She shook it. Thunk. Something was inside. Isaac had probably put a single penny in it. Or maybe a dollar bill. Just to be cruel. Just to twist the knife. Abigail felt a surge of rage so pure it blinded her. She screamed, a raw, guttural sound of 10 years of suppression, and hurled the piggy bank at the stone fireplace. The pink ceramic exploded into 1,000 shards. Abigail stood heaving, tears finally streaming down her face. She looked at the mess. Even in her rage, she was the one who would have to clean it up. That was her life, cleaning up Isaac's messes. She grabbed a broom from the closet. She swept the pink shards into a pile. Then she saw it. Sitting in the middle of the debris, untouched by the destruction, was a small, silver object. It wasn't a coin. It wasn't a bill. It was a USB drive. And taped to it was a small, rusted key. Abigail frowned. She knelt down and picked it up. The key looked old. It had a number stamped on it, number 402. And the USB drive, it was dusty. Suddenly, a memory flashed in her mind. 5 years ago, Isaac had come home drunk from a business trip in the Caymans. He had been paranoid, ranting about the feds, about audits. He had been holding a pink piggy bank, a gift from his niece that had been sitting on his desk. Best place to hide a tree is in a forest, he had mumbled. Best place to hide trash is in trash. He had shoved something inside the pig and put it on the high shelf in his study. He had forgotten. Years of wealth, of arrogance, of new cars and new mistresses had erased the memory of that night. He had seen the dusty pig on the shelf today, grabbed it as a prop for his cruel joke, completely forgetting that he had used it as a vault when he was scared. Abigail held the USB drive in her hand. It felt cold. She stood up. She walked to her laptop sitting on the desk. She plugged the drive in. A folder popped up. Do not delete. Shadow Ledger 2019. Abigail clicked it open. Rows and rows of numbers filled the screen. Offshore accounts. Shell companies. Bribes to zoning officials. And the source of the funds for the Boat Tail project. Abigail's eyes widened. She read the lines. Withdrawal. Charity Trust Fund A. Orphans and Widows Initiative. Destination. Rolls-Royce Motor Cars, Goodwood. He hadn't just bought the car with his money. He had bought it with the charity's money. The charity Abigail managed. He had framed her. Or he was planning to. But he had just handed her the evidence. Abigail looked out the window. Down at the main house, the party was raging. She could hear the music. She could imagine Isaac laughing, thinking he had won. Thinking he had crushed her with a $10 gift. Abigail closed the laptop. She picked up the rusted key. She wasn't crying anymore. Merry Christmas, Isaac, she whispered. Isaac just handed his wife the smoking gun inside a gag gift. What do you think is in the storage unit that key number 402 opens? And how should Abigail use this information? Let me know in the comments below. The blue light of the laptop screen was the only illumination in the guest cottage. Outside, the blizzard had picked up, the wind howling through the pines like a chorus of ghosts, masking the thumping bass of the party still raging in the main house. Abigail sat frozen. Her eyes scanned the spreadsheet on the screen, her breath hitching in her throat. Transaction ID, 990X. Source, the Abigail Sterling Foundation for Children. Amount, $10 million. Note, asset acquisition, Project Blue. He hadn't just bought a car for his mistress. He had embezzled the money from the charity Abigail had built from the ground up to honor her late sister. And because Abigail was the signatory on the foundation's accounts, a role Isaac had insisted she keep for the optics, she was the one who would go to prison when the audit hit. He wasn't just divorcing her. He was framing her. The cruelty of it was breathless. The piggy bank wasn't just a joke. It was a grave marker. Abigail looked at the rusted key in her hand. Number 402. She checked the USB drive files again. There was a scanned invoice in a subfolder named Storage. Aspen Iron Mountain Vaults. Unit 402. Access code. Redacted. Abigail knew the place. It was a fortress of climate-controlled storage units on the outskirts of town, used by the ultra-wealthy to store fur coats, art, and secrets they didn't want in their homes. She looked at the clock. 11:45 p.m. Christmas Eve. Isaac was drunk. Chantel was distracted. The security team was busy managing the 300 guests. If she was going to move, she had to move now. Abigail stood up. She stripped off the emerald velvet gown, the costume of the obedient wife, and threw it on the floor. She pulled on a pair of thermal leggings, a thick wool sweater, and her heavy snow boots. She grabbed a black parka and pulled the hood up. She grabbed the USB drive and the key. She slipped out the back door of the guest cottage. The cold hit her like a hammer, stealing the air from her lungs. The snow was knee-deep in the drifts. She didn't go to the main garage where her SUV was parked. Isaac's valet team would see her. Instead, she hiked through the tree line to the service road where the groundskeepers parked the maintenance vehicles. There was an old Ford truck there, used for plowing the long driveway. The keys were usually left under the mat. Abigail's frozen fingers fumbled under the rubber mat. Clink. She climbed in. The engine groaned in protest against the cold, but roared to life. She didn't turn on the headlights. She drove slowly down the service path, the tires crunching on the ice, slipping past the security gates without triggering the sensors. Aspen Iron Mountain Vaults, 12:30 a.m. The facility looked like a prison for inanimate objects. High fences, barbed wire, and cameras. Abigail punched in the gate code she found on the invoice. Access granted. She drove to Unit 402. It was an outdoor unit, heavy steel door, frozen shut with ice. She jumped out of the truck. The wind was vicious here, whipping snow into her face. She jammed the rusted key into the padlock. It wouldn't turn. Come on, she hissed, her teeth chattering. Come on. She breathed hot air onto the lock. She used the sleeve of her coat to wipe away the ice. She twisted the key with both hands, using all her strength. Snap. The lock opened. Abigail heaved the rolling door up. It screeched, the sound echoing in the silent night. She clicked on a flashlight she had found in the truck. The beam cut through the darkness. The unit wasn't filled with furs or paintings. It was filled with boxes. Banker's boxes. Dozens of them, stacked floor to ceiling. And in the center of the room, sitting on a wooden pallet, was a safe. Abigail walked to the nearest box. She ripped the lid off. Cash. Bundles of it. Shrink-wrapped stacks of $100 bills. But not just US dollars. Swiss francs. Euros. Yen. She opened another box. Passports. Photos of Isaac. But the names were different. David Stone. Marcus Vane. Elias Thorne. And then, the safe. She didn't have the combination. But looking closely, she saw it was an older model, a digital keypad that had been drilled into. It wasn't locked. She pulled the handle. Inside sat a single, thick leather binder. Abigail opened it. It wasn't financial records. It was a dossier. The exit strategy. She flipped through the pages, her heart hammering against her ribs so hard it hurt. It was a timeline. A detailed, premeditated plan dating back 3 years. Phase 1. Liquidation of joint assets. C. Shell companies. Phase 2. Transfer of liability. C. Abigail Sterling Foundation. Phase 3. The setup. There were emails printed out. Emails between Isaac and a man named The Fixer. The wife is too clean. We need dirt. If we can't find it, we manufacture it. Use the charity. Buy the toys with her signature stamp. When the IRS comes knocking, I'll be in non-extradition airspace, and she'll be in federal prison. Abigail dropped the binder. She fell to her knees on the cold concrete floor. It wasn't just a bad marriage. It was a long con. For 3 years, while she was planning his birthday parties, nursing him through the flu, and defending him to his critics, he was methodically building a cage for her to rot in. The piggy bank. Start saving. He knew she would need bail money. Abigail looked at the cash in the boxes. Millions. Enough to disappear. She could take it. She could run. She could grab a passport and vanish tonight. But then she thought about the Rolls-Royce. She thought about Chantel's smug face. She thought of the humiliation in the driveway. If she ran, she was a fugitive. If she ran, he won. Abigail stood up. She dusted the snow off her knees. She picked up the binder. She picked up a stack of cash, just one bundle, for operating expenses. She picked up the passports. She loaded them into the truck. She wasn't going to run. She was going to stay. Isaac wanted a war. He had forgotten the most important rule of combat. Never arm your enemy before you fire the first shot. He had given her the gun. Now, she was going to pull the trigger. Abigail just found out the divorce is actually a frame-up job to send her to prison. That is pure evil. If you were Abigail, would you take the cash and run, or stay and fight? Let me know your strategy in the comments. The dawn of Christmas morning did not bring peace to the Sterling estate. It brought a blinding, aggressive brightness that reflected off the 3 feet of fresh snow, turning the world into a white room of interrogation. Abigail had not slept. She had spent the hours between 2 a.m. and sunrise in the guest cottage, meticulously photographing every page of the binder and hiding the physical evidence. The stacks of cash were vacuum-sealed in freezer bags and taped inside the lining of her old winter coats in the back of the closet. The binder was buried beneath the floorboards under the rug. The USB drive was on a lanyard around her neck, tucked beneath her thermal shirt, resting against her skin like a cold, heavy stone. She walked back to the main house at 7 a.m. The air was still frigid, biting at her exposed face, but the cold didn't bother her anymore. She was burning with a fever of adrenaline. The main house was a tomb of excess. The great hall, which had hosted the spectacle the night before, smelled of stale champagne, pine needles, and expensive perfume that had soured overnight. The staff moved like specters, silently sweeping up the debris of the wealthy. Broken crystal flutes, discarded caviar blinis, and the ribbons from gifts that cost more than their annual salaries. Abigail walked past them. She didn't offer her usual apologetic smiles. She went straight to the kitchen, poured black coffee into a mug, and sat at the long mahogany dining table to wait. She needed to see him. She needed to look him in the eye one last time before she pulled the trigger. She needed to be sure that the man she had loved for 15 years was truly gone, replaced entirely by the monster who had planned to send her to federal prison. At 9:30 a.m., Isaac descended the grand staircase. He looked every inch the master of the universe, even in his silk pajamas. He was followed closely by Chantel, who was wearing one of Isaac's dress shirts, unbuttoned low enough to be a statement, and holding a mimosa. They were laughing about something, a shared joke that echoed in the cavernous space. Isaac spotted Abigail at the table. His smile didn't falter. It just curled at the edges, sharpening into a sneer. "Merry Christmas, Abigail," he drawled, walking over to the sideboard to pour himself a coffee. "I'm surprised you're here. I thought you'd be in the cottage, counting your pennies. Or did you break the pig already?" Abigail took a slow sip of her coffee. She watched him. She looked for a flicker of guilt, a trace of the man who had once cried at their wedding. There was nothing, just the flat, shark-like gaze of a man who viewed people as assets or liabilities. And she was a liability he was about to liquidate. "I broke it," Abigail said softly, her voice steady. "I was upset." Chantel giggled, hopping onto a bar stool. "Ah, poor thing. Did you hurt your hand? Ceramics can be sharp." "I'm fine," Abigail said, not looking at the girl. She kept her eyes locked on Isaac. "I was surprised, Isaac. I didn't think you'd be so thoughtful." Isaac paused, the coffee pot hovering over his mug. He looked at her, confused by her tone. He expected tears. He expected begging. He didn't expect calm. Thoughtful, he scoffed. It was a lesson, Abby. A lesson in economics. You're about to enter the real world. The world where $10 matters. I know, Abigail said. I learned a lot last night. More than you can imagine. Isaac dismissed her with a wave of his hand. Well, learn faster. The lawyers are coming tomorrow at 1 p.m. I want you packed and out of the main house by noon. You can stay in the cottage until the end of the week, but after that, I'm turning it into a yoga studio for Chantel. Yoga? Chantel squealed. Babe, you're the best. I'll be ready, Abigail said. She stood up, tightening the belt of her robe. I have to go into town. I have errands. On Christmas. Isaac raised an eyebrow. Nothing is open, Abigail. You have no friends to visit. Where are you going? To church, Abigail lied smoothly. I need to pray for us. Isaac laughed, a deep, barking sound that grated on her nerves. Pray away, sweetheart. Maybe God has a spare apartment you can rent. Maybe, Abigail said. She walked out of the room. As she passed the window, she saw the Rolls-Royce boat, tail sitting in the driveway, blue and gleaming, a $10 million insult parked on the snow. Enjoy it while you can, Isaac, she thought. It's the last ride you're ever going to take. Aspen downtown, 10:45 a.m. The streets of Aspen were picture perfect, lined with luxury boutiques and strung with white lights. Abigail drove her SUV past the Prada and Gucci stores, turning down a narrow alleyway behind the old mining district. She parked in front of a nondescript brick building that housed a failing bookstore on the ground floor. She pulled her hood up and walked inside, bypassing the books and heading straight for the back office. Sitting at a cluttered desk surrounded by towers of paperwork was Elias Vance. Elias was a forensic accountant, a man who saw the world in numbers rather than shapes. 5 years ago, he had been the CFO of Sterling Global. He was the one who had first noticed the discrepancies in the Cayman accounts. He had brought them to Isaac, thinking it was a mistake. Isaac had fired him on the spot, blacklisted him from the industry, and ruined his reputation. Elias was currently scraping by doing tax returns for ski instructors. He was the only person on earth who hated Isaac Sterling as much as Abigail did. You came, Elias said, not looking up from his computer. I brought receipts, Abigail replied. She placed the heavy leather binder on the desk. It landed with a dull thud. Elias stopped typing. He looked at the binder, then up at Abigail. His eyes, usually tired and cynical, sharpened behind his wire-rimmed glasses. Is this what I think it is? It's the exit strategy, Abigail said. Everything. The shell companies. The bribes. The laundering. And the setup. Elias opened the binder. He flipped through the pages, his fingers moving faster and faster. He stopped on a page detailing the transfers from the Abigail Sterling Foundation. Jesus, Elias whispered. He wasn't just stealing Abby. He was layering. He moved $10 million from the charity into a shell corp in Panama, then used that corp to buy the Rolls-Royce. He listed the car as a transport asset for the foundation's international relief efforts. Elias looked up, his face pale. Do you realize what this means? If the IRS audited this, they wouldn't look at Isaac. They'd look at the foundation. And since you're the signatory, I go to jail, Abigail finished. For embezzlement and tax fraud. While he drives off into the sunset with Chantel. It's evil, Elias muttered. It's brilliantly, clinically evil. Can we use it? Abigail asked. Can we bury him? Elias took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. We can, but we have to be smart. If we hand this binder to the FBI right now, they freeze everything. They seize the assets, lock the accounts, and launch an investigation that will take 5 years. During that time, Isaac will have his high-priced lawyers spinning the narrative that you were the mastermind, and he was the ignorant husband. I don't want to wait 5 years, Abigail said. I want him to hurt today. Elias leaned back in his chair. A slow, predatory smile spread across his face. The smile of a man who had waited 5 years for a shot at the king. Okay, Elias said. Let's look at the asset. The Rolls-Royce. The paper trail says the foundation bought it. The foundation owns it. And you are the president of the foundation. Technically, yes. Then technically, Elias said, tapping the page, Isaac is in possession of stolen property. Or at the very least, he is unauthorized to use a charitable asset for personal recreation. He's taking it for a drive at noon, Abigail said. He wants to do a victory lap through town. He wants everyone to see him in his $10 million toy. Elias pulled out his phone. He dialed a number. I have a friend, Elias said to Abigail while the phone rang. Big guy. Runs a repo company that specializes in high-end disputes. Usually it's divorces or bankruptcies. He hates bullies. Does he work on Christmas? For triple pay? He'd work during the apocalypse. Elias spoke into the phone. Mikey. It's Elias. Yeah, Merry Christmas. Listen, I have a job. A big one. A boat tail. Yes, the rolls. No, the paperwork is clean. The owner is sitting right in front of me. We need an extraction. Today. Noon. The Sterling estate. He listened for a moment, then grinned. Bring the flatbed. The big one. And bring the team. This guy is going to scream. He hung up. He looked at Abigail. Mikey is in. But we need to time this perfectly. We need to catch him when he feels the safest. When he feels like a god. He feels like a god right now, Abigail said. He thinks I'm at church praying for his forgiveness. Good, Elias said. He stood up and grabbed his coat. Let's go answer his prayers. The Sterling estate, 12:45 p.m. The sun was high and bright, reflecting off the pristine snow. The temperature had risen slightly, just enough to make the air crisp and inviting. Isaac stood in the driveway, wearing a cashmere coat and aviator sunglasses. He walked around the Rolls-Royce boat tail, admiring the lines. It was a masterpiece of automotive art. The rear deck opened up to reveal a champagne fridge and a parasol. It was ridiculous. It was excessive. It was perfect. Babe, hurry up. Chantel called from the front door. She was struggling to put on her snow boots. Come on, Chantel, Isaac yelled back. We're burning daylight. I want to drive past the country club before the lunch crowd leaves. I want Vandermeer to see this. Chantel finally emerged, bundled in a white fur coat that Isaac had bought her last week. Also using foundation money, though she didn't know that. They got into the car. The interior smelled of hand-stitched leather and victory. Isaac pushed the start button. The V12 engine purred to life, a sound so smooth it was barely audible, just a vibration of power in the seat. God, I love this car. Isaac sighed, stroking the steering wheel. It drives like a cloud. It matches my eyes, Chantel said, checking her makeup in the visor mirror. Let's go, Isaac said. He shifted into drive and eased the massive car down the winding heated driveway. He felt like the king of the mountain. He had the money, the girl, the car, and tomorrow, he would be free of the wife. He reached the bottom of the driveway where it met the main road. The massive iron gates were open, but the exit was blocked. A black, unmarked van was parked sideways across the gate, completely obstructing the path. Isaac slammed on the brakes. What the hell? He honked the horn, a polite, refined European toot. The van didn't move. Is that paparazzi? Chantel asked, adjusting her hair. Probably, Isaac grunted. Vultures. I'll handle them. He rolled down the window and leaned out. Hey, move the van. You're blocking private property. The side door of the van slid open. Two men stepped out. They weren't paparazzi. They were massive. They wore tactical black gear and combat boots. One of them, a man with a beard like a Viking, held a clipboard. This was Mikey. Behind the van, Abigail's SUV pulled up. Isaac watched, confused, as Abigail stepped out. She wasn't wearing her church clothes. She was wearing her black parka and snow boots. And standing next to her, looking smug, was Elias Vance. Isaac felt a jolt of recognition. The accountant. What is this? Isaac muttered. What is she doing? He opened the car door and stepped out into the snow. Abigail, he shouted. What is the meaning of this? Who are these goons? And why is he here? He pointed a gloved finger at Elias. Abigail didn't shout. She walked toward him, her steps crunching softly in the snow. She stopped exactly 3 feet away. Merry Christmas, Isaac, she said. Her voice was calm, conversational. It terrified him. Get that van out of the way, Isaac commanded, trying to regain control. We are going for a drive. No, Abigail said. You're not. Elias stepped forward. Mr. Sterling, I'm afraid this vehicle has been flagged for immediate repossession. Isaac stared at him, then burst out laughing. It was a harsh, incredulous sound. Repossession? Are you insane? I paid cash. $10 million. I have the title in my safe. Actually, Elias said, holding up a copy of the ledger page Abigail had photographed. You have a title that lists the Abigail Sterling Foundation as the owner. And since the funds used to purchase this vehicle originated from the foundation's account, without the authorization of the board or the president, this car is considered embezzled property. Isaac's laugh died in his throat. He looked at the paper. He recognized the font. It was his ledger, the one hidden in the storage unit. His eyes darted to Abigail. "You," he whispered. "You broke the pig." "I did," Abigail said. "And I found the key. Key number 402. Remember it, Isaac? Or did you purge that memory along with your conscience?" Isaac's face went pale. The blood drained from his cheeks, leaving him looking gray against the snow. He remembered. The night in the study. The paranoia. The hiding place. He had handed her the gun. "Abby, listen," Isaac said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming wheedling. "Let's not do this here. Let's go inside. We can talk." Elias is confused. "I can explain the accounting. It's complicated tax strategy." "It's not complicated," Abigail said. "It's theft. You stole from orphans to buy a toy for your mistress." She looked at the car. Chantel was staring out the window, looking terrified. "Get out of the car, Chantel," Abigail called out. Chantel hesitated, looking at Isaac. "Stay in the car," Isaac yelled. "This is my property. You touch it, I'll sue you into oblivion." Mikey, the large repo man, stepped forward. He didn't look impressed by Isaac's suit or his threats. He walked up to the driver's side door. "Sir, step away from the vehicle," Mikey rumbled. "Make me," Isaac spat. Mikey didn't blink. He simply reached into his belt and pulled out a bright orange sticker. He slapped it onto the windshield of the Rolls-Royce, right over the driver's line of sight. "Hey!" Isaac lunged at him. Mikey caught Isaac's arm effortlessly, twisting it behind his back and pinning him against the hood of the $10 million car. "Don't make this a police matter, sir," Mikey said politely. "Right now, it's just a civil dispute. You swing at me, it becomes assault." "Let him go," Chantel screamed, scrambling out of the passenger seat. She ran around the car, swinging her expensive purse at Mikey. The second repo man caught her gently but firmly, steering her away toward the snowbank. "Abigail," Isaac yelled, his face pressed against the cold metal of the car hood. "Stop this. You're humiliating me. The neighbors are watching." Abigail looked up the road. A few cars had stopped. People were filming with their phones. Mrs. Vandermeer's SUV was idling nearby, the socialite watching with wide, delighted eyes. "You wanted a spectacle, Isaac," Abigail said, walking closer to him. "You wanted everyone to see the car. Well, now they're seeing it." She reached into her pocket. She pulled out the ceramic shards of the piggy bank. She held them in her gloved hand. "You told me to start saving," she said. "So I saved this car. I'm taking it back to the foundation. We're going to auction it off. It should feed a lot of children." She dropped the shards at his feet. They clattered on the asphalt. "Load it up," Abigail commanded. Mikey released Isaac, shoving him backward into a snowbank. Isaac stumbled and fell, his cashmere coat soaking up the slush. The flatbed truck roared to life, backing up toward the Rolls-Royce. The winch cable was dragged out. Isaac scrambled to his feet. He looked frantic. He looked at Abigail, realizing for the first time that she wasn't the silent, invisible wife anymore. She was the executioner. "You can't take it," Isaac pleaded, tears of rage and impotence stinging his eyes. "It's one of 3 in the world. You'll scratch the paint. Abigail, please. I'll give you money. I'll rewrite the prenup." "I don't need your money, Isaac," Abigail said, watching the hook attached to the undercarriage of the Rolls. "I have the ledger. I have the cash. And I have the passports." Isaac froze. You went to the unit?" "I cleaned it out," Abigail said. "It's empty, Isaac. Just like you." The winch whined. The Rolls-Royce, Isaac's pride and joy, was dragged unceremoniously up the ramp of the flatbed. The bottom scraped with a gut-wrenching screech. Isaac flinched as if he had been physically hit. Chantel stood shivering in the snow, looking from the car to Isaac, realizing that the man she thought was a king was actually a pauper in a stolen robe. The truck secured the car. Mikey hopped into the driver's seat. "Where to, Mrs. Sterling?" Mikey called out window. "The sheriff's impound lot," Abigail said loud enough for Isaac to hear. "Evidence locker." The truck rumbled away, carrying the blue jewel down the mountain. Abigail turned to Elias. "Step 1 complete," she said. "Ready for step 2? Elias asked, a grim smile on his face. "What's step 2? Isaac demanded, shivering, wet, and defeated. What else are you going to take? Abigail looked at the massive mansion behind him, the golden cage she had lived in for 10 years. Step 2, Abigail said, is the eviction. Get your things, Isaac. You're trespassing on Foundation property. Abigail just repossessed the Rolls-Royce and revealed she emptied his secret vault. Isaac is watching his empire crumble in the snow. Do you think Chantel will stay with him now that the money is gone? And what is Abigail going to do with the exit strategy binder? Let me know your predictions in the comments. The silence that descended on the Sterling driveway after the tow truck disappeared was heavy, broken only by the distant, grinding gears of the flatbed hauling away $10 million of hubris. Isaac stood in the snow, his cashmere coat damp and stained from his fall. He stared at the empty space where the car had been. His hands were shaking, not from the cold, but from a terrifying, dawning realization that the ground beneath him was dissolving. You're bluffing, Isaac whispered, turning to Abigail. He tried to summon the imperious tone he used in boardrooms, but it cracked. You can't evict me. I bought this land. My name is on the deed. Elias Vance stepped forward, adjusting his glasses against the glare of the snow. He pulled another document from his clipboard. Actually, Isaac, Elias said, in 2019, during your tax optimization phase, Project Blue, I believe you called it, you transferred the title of the Sterling Mountain estate to a holding company called Veritas Holdings. Isaac blinked. So? I own Veritas. You own Veritas, Elias corrected. But to shield the asset from the SEC audit you were terrified of, you placed Veritas under the umbrella of the Abigail Sterling Foundation. You thought it was a clever way to hide the house in plain sight, while keeping it tax-exempt as a charitable retreat center. Elias smiled. It was a cold, sharp expression. You made Abigail the landlord, Isaac. And you are a tenant. A tenant who has violated the morality clause of his lease by using the premises for illicit activities. Abigail stepped closer. The wind whipped her hair, but she didn't shiver. She felt fueled by a fire that had been smoldering for years. The lease is terminated, Isaac, she said. Effective immediately. This is insane, Isaac shouted, his eyes darting around. Mrs. Vandermeer was still watching from her SUV, filming everything. You can't just throw me out in the snow on Christmas. I have rights. I have money. He reached for his phone. I'm calling my lawyers. I'm calling the bank. I'm going to bury you, Abigail. You hear me? I'm going to bury you. He dialed his private banker in Zurich. We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service. He frowned. He dialed the Cayman account manager. Your call cannot be completed as dialed. He looked at his phone, confused. Then he looked at Abigail. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the USB drive, the one she had found inside the piggy bank. She held it up. You're looking for the money, she said. But you can't reach it. Because you gave me the codes. Isaac froze. His eyes locked onto the USB drive. That's the key, Abigail said. And the binder. I found them, Isaac. I went to Unit 402 last night. I read the exit strategy. I saw how you planned to frame me. I saw how you planned to run. Isaac's face went gray. He took a step back, stumbling in the slush. You went to the unit, he croaked. I did, Abigail said. And I made a few changes to your plan. I transferred the liquid assets. All of them. The Swiss accounts. The Cayman shells. I moved them into a secure escrow account controlled by the Department of Justice, pending an investigation into money laundering. You called the feds. Isaac screamed. Are you crazy? They'll take everything. They'll take me. That's the point, Isaac, Abigail said calmly. I didn't want the money. I just wanted to make sure you didn't have it. Chantel, who had been standing silently by the snowbank, suddenly moved. She walked over to Isaac. Wait, she said, her voice high and panicked. What does she mean? You don't have any money. Isaac turned to her, desperate for an ally. Chantel, baby, don't listen to her. It's a temporary freeze. I have millions buried in crypto. I have. The crypto keys were in the binder, Abigail interrupted. I gave those to the IRS this morning. Chantel looked at Isaac. She looked at his stained coat. She looked at the empty driveway. She looked at the furious, powerful woman standing in the snow. The calculation in Chantel's eyes was visible. She wasn't a villain. She was a mercenary. And the checks had just bounced. I can't do this, Chantel said. What? Isaac asked. I can't do broke, she said. I signed up for the yacht, Isaac. I signed up for the roles. I didn't sign up for federal prison and snowbanks. She pulled off the diamond bracelet Isaac had given her last week. She shoved it into her pocket. I'm calling an Uber, she said. Chantel. Isaac pleaded, reaching for her. Don't leave me. We're a team. The king and queen. You're not a king, Chantel sneered, stepping out of his reach. You're just a guy who got outsmarted by his wife. She turned and walked down the driveway toward the main road, her silver boots slipping on the ice, leaving Isaac alone in the center of his collapsing world. Isaac stood trembling. He looked at Abigail. The arrogance was gone. The predator was gone. All that was left was a scared, middle-aged man who had forgotten where the power in his life actually came from. Abby, he whispered. Please. He took a step toward her, his hands open. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm sorry about the pig. It was a joke. A bad joke. I was stressed. But we can fix this. We can get the money back. We can go away. Just give me the passports. Please. I know you took the passports. Abigail looked at him. She remembered the years of gaslighting. The way he made her feel small so he could feel big. The way he had handed her a $10 pig in front of their friends while he planned to send her to jail. I did take the passports, she said. Give them to me, Isaac begged. I need to leave. Tonight. If the feds are involved. I can't be here. Abigail reached into her bag. She pulled out a stack of blue and red passports. David Stone. Marcus Vane. Isaac's eyes lit up with hope. Abigail walked over to the fire pit that sat in the center of the courtyard, a decorative gas feature that was currently unlit. She pulled a lighter from her pocket. She flicked it. No. Isaac screamed, lunging forward. Elias stepped in his way, blocking him with a solid shoulder. Abigail held the flame to the edge of the passports. The paper caught. The faces of Isaac's fake identities curled and blackened. She dropped them into the fire pit and watched them burn. You're not going anywhere, Isaac, she said. You're going to stay right here and face what you did. She turned to Elias. Call the sheriff, she said. Tell him we have a trespasser. And tell him to bring the fraud unit. Abigail. Isaac fell to his knees in the snow. You can't do this. I'm your husband. Not anymore, Abigail said. Tomorrow at 1 p.m., remember? The lawyers are coming. She turned her back on him. She walked toward the front door of the mansion. Elias, help him pack a bag, she called out over her shoulder. Put his things in a garbage bag. It seems appropriate. She walked into the house and closed the heavy timber door, shutting out the cold, the wind, and the weeping of a man who had finally gone broke. Chantel walked out. The money is gone, and Isaac is on his knees in the snow. Abigail just burned his escape route literally and figuratively. Do you think burning the passports was the right move, or should she have let him run? Let me know in the comments below. 6 months later. Spring had come to Aspen. The snow had melted, revealing the lush green of the mountains. The air smelled of wildflowers and pine resin. Abigail sat on the terrace of the Sterling estate, now renamed the Sterling Recovery Center. She wasn't wearing velvet or diamonds. She was wearing jeans and a linen shirt, her hair tied back in a loose ponytail. She looked younger, lighter. She was reviewing blueprints with Elias. The renovation of the East Wing is almost done, Elias said, pointing to the plans. We're turning the ballroom into a counseling center for victims of financial abuse. And the garage? Well, the garage is now the art therapy studio. Abigail smiled. Good. It's better than housing cars that cost more than a hospital wing. The last 6 months had been a whirlwind of legal battles, depositions, and headlines. Billionaire indicted in charity fraud scheme. Wife turns whistleblower, saves foundation. Isaac was currently awaiting trial in a federal detention center in Denver. His bail had been denied, thanks to the flight risk evidence Abigail and Elias had provided. He was facing 20 years. Chantel had testified against him in exchange for immunity. She was now launching a reality show called Gold Digger Rehab. Abigail picked up her coffee. Any word from the auction? Just came in, Elias said, sliding a paper across the table. Abigail looked at the number. Sold, 2023 Rolls-Royce boat tail. Winning bid, $12.5 million. Net proceeds to Abigail Sterling Foundation, $12.5 million. $12 million. Abigail whispered. That's enough to fund the shelter for 5 years. And the piggy bank? Elias asked with a grin. Abigail laughed. That was a better investment than he knew. She stood up and walked to the edge of the terrace. She heard the crunch of gravel. A car was pulling up. It wasn't a Rolls-Royce. It wasn't a Bentley. It was a vintage 1970 Ford Bronco. Mint green. Convertible. It was rugged, classic, and entirely unpretentious. Abigail walked down the steps. The delivery driver hopped out. "Miss Sterling? Here's the car you ordered." "It's beautiful," Abigail said, running her hand along the hood. It was the car she had wanted when she was 20, before Isaac told her it was too pedestrian. She signed the clipboard. She took the keys. She got in. The engine roared to life, a loud, unrefined rumble that vibrated in her chest. Elias walked down to join her. "Where are you going?" he asked. "For a drive," Abigail said. "A victory lap. Do you want company?" "Not today," Abigail smiled. "Today, I just want to feel the wind." She shifted gears. She didn't look back at the mansion. It wasn't her cage anymore. It was just a building doing good work. She drove down the winding mountain road. She passed the spot where the Rolls-Royce had been seized. She passed the spot where Isaac had fallen in the snow. She felt a ghost of the pain, but it was fading, replaced by the warmth of the sun. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small object. It was a new piggy bank. This one wasn't cheap ceramic. It was made of solid, polished brass. She placed it on the dashboard. She had put her first $10 of freedom into it this morning. It wasn't much, but it was hers. Clean, honest, and solely her own. Abigail sped up, the wind whipping her hair, driving toward a future that couldn't be bought, only built. What a transformation. Abigail turned a $10 insult into a $12 million victory for charity and reclaimed her life. She proved that true worth isn't about what you drive, but what drives you. If you love this story of justice and empowerment, please like and subscribe for more emotional stories every week. Thanks for watching. Thank you so much for watching my story all the way to the end. Your support means everything. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts.